You are listening to Nerd Best Friends, a podcast that covers the nerdy conversations you're already having, or wish you could. It's the nerdiest thing you'll do this week.
Welcome back to another episode of Nerd Best Friends. I am Annalise, and I'm here with my best friend, Rob.
Hey, it's me, Rob, your best friend, your super nerd, and your podcast host. Listen to Nerd Best Friends across all popular podcasting platforms. Your support means the world to us, so be sure to click subscribe or follow on all your devices. If you're looking to take your support to the next level, consider joining us on Patreon or making a one-time donation on Venmo.
Here we are, episode 54. It is the end of season 3 for Nerd Best Friends. I can't believe we're finishing our 3rd season. And today, just like the end of all seasons, we're going to recap our favorite moments from season 3. But first, for the last time this season, what I like about it.
Hello, Annalise.
Hello.
This episode, for what I like about it, we are going to talk about lightweight RPGs, or they are some called, a lot of them are two-stat RPGs.
Okay.
They're very simplified, role-play heavy, stats light ideas of, for people who love the role-play aspect, don't necessarily love the math aspect or keeping track of a giant spreadsheet of skills and feats and features and those kinds of things. These are, a lot of times, sometimes they'll be called like one-page RPGs because all the rules and storytelling can fit on a single sheet of paper. I know you're familiar with at least one of these that we've done before, which was Honey Heist.
Yes. Okay.
Do you want to share what Honey Heist is?
Yeah, Honey Heist was fun. We also can call that a one-shot, right? Like it's a single sit down and play and you get it done in a short amount of time.
Absolutely. You're not going to create like a big campaign about it, right?
Yeah. Honey Heist, you picked between one of 6 different bears, and you had a scenario in which your bears had to steal some honey. And that scenario, I think, if I remember correctly, was all decided through dice rolling.
Yes, so it's randomly generated from the
Yeah.
game. You just roll for it, and it says, okay, you're at this location, this is the bad guy, they're trying to do this, and make up a story. Go.
Right. And I think the characters are in the same. You picked like one of the bears, and you rolled for their, like, you were right. I like the idea of it being called two-stat, because you didn't have a lot to track, but you rolled for like the stats of your bear.
So in Honey Heist,
there was even a little coloring
I'll remind you,
it's
you roll for bear or you roll for criminal. And your stat adjusts based on your successes and failures. So if you're doing something that a bear would do, like growl and try to scare somebody away, you roll against your bear stat.
Right.
But if you're trying to like use your big long bear claw to pick a lock to get into something, you'd be doing a criminal maneuver. And and that's it. Everything your character wants to do, if the game master wants you to roll for it or there's some kind of challenge, you have this kind of back and forth of deciding, is that more of a bear thing or a criminal thing?
Right.
Another great example of a game just like that with a science fiction twist is called Lasers and Feelings. That's a game, very niche game that I think was invented about like a song the Double Clicks have, like very small,
okay.
but it's the same thing, except you're science fiction, you're on a ship, kind of like a Star Trek type thing, and you build up your crew, and you have 2 stats. You have lasers or feelings. If you're trying to do something more personable, like talk to somebody, convince somebody, that kind of thing, no problem. You use your feelings stat. And if you're trying to do something science fiction-y, like to fix the hyperdrive and those kinds of things, you roll against your laser stat. Same thing, fits on one page. It gives you that, like, you roll 4d6 and it tells you what the plot is and who the bad guy is, and then you just roll through a few hours of role play. Couple more that I know about, I'm looking forward to playing, I haven't gotten a chance on these yet, is Cthulhu Dark. Cthulhu Dark is another way to play like in that Call of Cthulhu H.P. Lovecraft scenarios where you're an investigator and there's probably something like mystical and ancient and spooky going on, and your 2 stats there are insanity, surprise, surprise, and investigation. So you're either doing something that has to do with, the lore and in the craziness of the mystical other world, or you're looking for clues and doing things more in the real world. And then the last one that I know of that I'd be excited to play is called The Witch is Dead. And in this one, you are a friendly, cute little forest animal who used to live in the middle of the forest with a witch. There was a witch out in the forest making cauldrons and potions and eating children. I don't know what they were doing. It probably depends on the game you're playing. But something happened. Some adventurers came or some woodsman came and killed the witch. And now you and your little buddies, the animals who used to be like the witch's familiars type things, got to go get revenge or got to go steal back the something so you can bring her back. Things like that. Very role play heavy, very easy to get into, just a silly good time. And that's really what I like about it is the onboarding is quick. As long as you've got a good crew that's going to buy in and talk in silly voices and do funny things for a few hours, it's one page. You pick it up and you go.
If someone is new to this or wants to check these out, what's a good place to go look at these 2-stat or lightweight RPGs?
I would say, most of them you can find. I know Honey Heist I purchased off like DM's Guild or maybe even from probably right from the website. So I just search Honey Heist and you can download a PDF. I think it might be free or it might be one of those pay what you want deals, suggested price $2 kind of thing. Lasers and Feelings is free. You just search for it and it pops right up, a nice PDF. The other ones, I'm not sure, but if they're not free, they're very cheap because it's always just going to be like a little PDF and a character sheet or something like that. So a couple bucks.
Very cool. Honey Heist was fun. I'd be down.
I think they all would be fun. And I think that fun just comes from like just buying in,
Yeah. I want to say Honey Heist was one of the first ones that I played with you, not as the DM. I think Andrew ran that game. And I think that was one of the first games I played it's one of the first times I played role playing with you as a player, not the DM. I think it's funny too, like Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder, some of these very rule heavy games that have been around for a long time, they attract a certain kind of nerd. They attract the nerd that wants to track stats and min-max and these kinds of things. And so it's also kind of fun to like frustrate that player that is used to, role-playing games mean I'm going to max all these stats and spend a bunch of time massaging these numbers. It's like, nah, dog, you're a squirrel. We got to go find a witch. You got to think like a bear here, bro.
Exactly.
Well, let's get to the nerd mail.
Nerd mail.
Nerd mail for me, I think it's worth repeating because we talked about Hellmouth Con. What I didn't mention last episode is that it was a listener who sent us the link. So thank you to the listener who sent us the link to Hellmouth Con. Like I said last episode, I got our tickets. We're going. It's going to be great. How about you, Rob? You got any nerd mail?
I don't have anybody who wrote in or gave a comment this week to share, but I just will use this opportunity to give a shout out to a podcast that I discovered over the last couple weeks, which was Dino Discoveries. It is a wonderful factual podcast about dinosaurs with tons of hilarious characters and wonderful sound effects. It'll only cost you about 3.5 minutes of your time, and it is done by my 7-year-old nephew, and it is delightful. I recommend it wholeheartedly. Go ahead and give Dino Discoveries a follow and a like on your favorite podcatcher and make somebody's day, make a kid's day.
Look at that. A 7-year-old following in his uncle's footsteps, making a podcast. And here we are at the end of season 3, Rob. Let's recap some of our favorite things about this season.
We will start with favorite episode. Annalise, what is your favorite episode from season 3?
This was a tough one. I think we had a lot of really good topics this season. We had fewer guests, but good topics. I really liked sharing our story about playing D&D in Vegas with that group. It's a story that I shared at the start of the school year with my new staff, and people still come and ask me questions about it. Like it was such an impactful story that we played D&D from early in the pandemic for 3 years, level 1 through level 20. Like I had students, Mr. So-and-so told us the D&D club. Mr. So-and-so told us you played to a level 20 game and blah, blah. So I told them the story too. Like it was really fun sharing that story. And I really liked that our game mates at that table, our team at the table also contributed to that episode and talked to us. They sent in voice messages about their experience and how cool it was and unique it was. I really liked sharing that, but I think I'm going to say the marching band episode was probably my favorite episode of this.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think so. It was we had a lot of reminiscent type episodes or pieces of that throughout this season. Was a really big overarching theme for our season. But that one, it's just really unique. Like I said in that episode, that we are social friends with a former student, which is rare. I'm not social friends with any others. Like I've met up with them if I'm in town or like, hey, let's meet for dinner, or hey, we're having this reunion thing, or things, friends on Facebook or whatever it may be. It's a rare thing. So to have Adam on the episode was pretty cool. And then to talk about the ripples of effect. I'm not a marching band instructor. I haven't been for 5 years now, but to know the ripples that there are students that we won that gold medal with, former students that we won that gold medal with, that are continuing the work, and they'll inform and inspire the next thing, and those ripples will be there forever. So it was really cool to have that episode.
Oh, well, that's super nice. Yeah.
Both
bangers.
Oh yeah, for sure. What was your favorite episode?
I'm going to choose the Quantum Leap episode.
Of course you are.
Even though that was a pretty niche episode, let me set the scene for you for the Quantum Leap episode. I believe that one came out very close to before Christmas. It might have come out like the week before Christmas. And I was driving around, because I think it was after our like gift giving episode that happens in like early December that we do. So it was the one that was like, right there before Christmas. And I was driving around doing a bunch of Christmas shopping for whatever reason. I super procrastinated this year. I didn't have anything for a bunch of family members. So I was like, I got to drive down south. I got to go out of town. I got to go to a bunch of these big stores. I got to hit the big Barnes and Noble that's out of town. I got to hit a couple of these like outlet centers and stuff and get some gifts. So I was driving around like all day. It was busy. The freeway was busy. The parking lots were busy. So I was in the car a lot, and I was just listening through my podcast feed, catching up on a bunch of podcasts and stuff that I subscribe to. And one of them was ours. And danged if it didn't just fit right in. Like it was even or better, right? Produced and edited and great music and stuff. So I'm listening to these podcasts that have like, 50,000 people who listen to them a week and stuff. And ours was right in the middle there. And there wasn't any quality difference. In fact, it was very interesting and funny. And it was explaining something that you could tell that we both enjoyed, and we were nerding out. Like it was very on brand. It was like, what's this podcast about? So, these two best friends who nerd out about like something that you may or may not have ever heard of or forgot about or something like that. And so that one hit all the marks. And I remember texting you like, hey, our podcast is good. Like,
I do remember getting that. Yes.
We have a good product that we're going out here. And I've always enjoyed the podcast because it's a great excuse for us to get together and chat a few times a month and make sure that, we're having a good time and we're being creative and, we're keeping our friendship going, even if we're in a long distance relationship in that sense, right? But it's good. Like I listened to it and I was like, you know what? Our podcast is good. Like I don't want, like even though it's kind of hard sometimes to fit in the schedule doing the notes, or it's kind of hard sometimes to do the other thing. And sometimes we have to postpone. And I know that means like it makes it harder for you to edit and spend a bunch of time and stuff like that. It's like, it's not just for us. Like it's a good product. And that episode on that particular day, as it was just mixed in with that thing, I was like, this is good.
I appreciate you saying that, because it's not just the content, right? Quantum Leap's your favorite episode. It was the episode, like I could have said season 1. I think I did say season 1. Buffy was my favorite, right? Sure. Makes sense. But also the parallel between those two. In season 1, that Buffy episode, we really turned a corner in the quality of our podcast, because it was the first episode where we had that chart and we like thought about our answers and this, that, or the other. And we've kept with that for every episode in terms of the production quality. But then
that's interesting to know that was like there was a change in our production, because we've used that chart, like our show notes structure from then on.
Yeah. And I agree with you. I've had some moments of listening to other podcasts and then ours pops up in the rotation and going, oh, this is on par with some of those podcasts. Yeah. And especially those that have like millions of followers. And what I keep thinking is like, we had a real boom in listenership last season, and we've kind of maintained this season. I can't help but think that at next season, we're going to have another big boon, just gaining more listeners. I would not be disappointed or hesitant for them to go back seasons and listen to old episodes. Like when we were in season 2 and people are like, oh, I didn't know you had a podcast. And I say, the first ones, give us a chance.
I always say start with the most recent and work your way back, because the best one
we're not sequential
will be the one right now, because we get better and better every week. Right.
But I wouldn't feel that way for season season 2 or 3, they could go back to either of those seasons and have that same quality. It's also
3 for sure. This season you could listen to in order. I think the quality is high all the way through. Or either way. I mean, you could start with this one and then get this preview of what was happening in the season, work your way backwards, and then have it unfold before you.
Boom.
Like in media res.
There like Inception, but not really like Inception at all. The other thing that made me think, like, I've gotten to a point where an episode I can do now in maybe under 2.5 hours. I am getting really fast at editing and keeping that tempo and that quality. I've started to think, how much money could I make just being a podcast editor? How much would people charge, like pay me to edit their podcast? Like that, I mean, I can retire as a teacher in 10 more years. Yeah. And in that 10 years, build a portfolio that I could just collect retirement and edit podcasts. Like, I feel confident enough in my skills that might actually be a next thing down the line.
That's fantastic, because I have edited podcasts before and I hate it. I never got to a point where it was like, oh man, you know what? I'm in a groove and I think I got this. I was always like, this is the worst. It takes, it was like, you can't multitask at all. You have to be listening to every single thing and watching the bars and stripes the whole time. You get distracted. You have to go back. It's very difficult there. And it just takes forever. I would say, like, it's like, at least, even if you're real good, an hour of content takes 2 hours to edit.
Yeah.
And that's if you're real good.
Yeah.
Oh, I just thank you for your service.
I've gotten to the point where I know what the word looks like on the audio wave.
Oh my gosh.
I know what like, I edit out sometimes our real heavy inhale breaths. I know what those look like visually. Like,
I'm guilty of that.
No, we're both guilty of it. Also, the word like, we both are Californians and we're like a lot. And I know what those look like on the screens. I'm not 100% with that, but I'm like, oh, this is an, okay, cutting it out. But yeah, it could very much be a next thing. And it's hit me in a creative spot that I don't really have, because I'm not playing my instrument right now. And there are times where it's like, I don't want to sit at the computer and edit, but that's in the middle of this really busy first year job that I have, right? I don't think it's going to be that all the time. I mean, there was one time that I knew I had about an hour left to do. Usually the episode break to the end of the episode where we do the nerdiest things, that's about 45 minutes to an hour, that last little bit, right? And it was, I don't know, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. I'm falling asleep at my table. And I went, you know what? I'm just going to go to sleep. I'm just going to go to sleep because I can spend 3 hours doing this as tired as I am. I'll just get up at 4 a.m. after sleeping for 4 or 5 hours, and I'll be able to knock it out in 45 minutes and set it up. And I did that twice this season. Got up at 4 a.m. and just did some work. Finished the episode, upload it, and then did some work for stuff, took a shower, exercised. Like, I was able to do all that like it's nothing. So that could definitely be a thing. But yeah, that was a bit of a tangent from your favorite episode. But I appreciate you saying that it wasn't just the content. It was also, we do have.
Oh no, it's the quality. It's the production is what makes it. I mean, is what makes it a professional podcast that we feel comfortable saying, like, hey, we should have a Patreon. This is where, like, there's quality here. There's a value to what we're doing. With a value to value model, somebody might want to throw us a buck to, keep this content going and, inspire us to not only, keep going and keep it up, but be able to pay for those server. Like, there's just hard costs that go along with having something. Favorite moment? How would you classify your favorite moment?
Oh, this one's an easy one for me. My favorite moment is our big nerd fight on the Harry Potter and Star Wars episode. This is my favorite moment. It is. I was even like getting mad again, editing it.
Thinking about it.
I was never really actually mad, but I think our listeners really like it when we nerd fight. And I think one of the beautiful parts of our friendship over all these decades now is that we can have that nerd fight and not actually be mad at each other.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole idea of, like, the nerdy conversations you're having, or wish you could be, is that idea of sitting around your comic book store, your game store, and just getting into these big flame wars with people. Yes. And you still want that person to come back and play a game the next week or pick up their comic books, right? You're not gonna, make an enemy, but it's good that you think we can be a good example for the rest of the nerds.
Or just that the things we're nerd fighting about aren't so serious that it's gonna end a friendship, right?
Well,
it's gonna end a relationship. Yeah,
they never are. But it's
Right.
really, but it definitely gets to that. What happened to that dude you used to hang out with? Oh, we got a big fight and we don't talk about it anymore. Oh my God. What
Can
was
you
the fight
believe he
about?
thinks that Quantum Leap is a ripoff of the 1963? You definitely hear conversations like that, but I
He
think that's the
thinks
beauty.
that the wings on top of Captain America's helmet don't need to be there, that they're stupid.
That's good stuff. I also think it's a Gen X quality because we grew up in an era of just bagging on each other all the time that you kind of had to have thick skin because if you didn't, you just didn't have any friends.
I suppose so. I mean, if you think about those classic 90s Bill and Ted's or Mallrats or
Beavis and Butthead.
Yeah, right? It's just hacking on each other the whole time and trying to be as funny as you can at the other person's expense and just going back and forth. That's funny.
What was your favorite moment this season?
I remember, also it goes back to your favorite episode, the marching band episode. I remember going in there with an agenda and notes and a show doc about, we're going to talk about marching band and here are the topics we're going to be talking about marching band. And me and Adam talking for 30 minutes about 3D printing.
What I like about it was the longest part of that episode.
And it was so funny, but I'll tell you, it was genuine. That was a nerd conversation. We got on a topic and we just nerded out about it for 30 minutes of the thing. And I was like, poor Annalise has to edit all this, but
look, 30 minutes was about 23 minutes was the final piece. Y'all went on for about 45 minutes.
I believe it. I remember doing that. I remember I felt like we finished a podcast and then it was like, oh, now let's do our marching band podcast.
There was 3 hours it was another one just like season 2 when we did not Quantum Leap. What was the other show that we had Sean and Juliana?
Oh, Firefly.
Oh yeah. The Firefly episode had 3 hours of content. Our marching band episode had 3 hours of content slimmed down to about an hour and a half. So remember, for every hour long show that we usually have 90 minutes to 2 hours of content.
So yeah,
hijacked is correct.
That was yes, I use the word hijack because it was pretty wild and that's how I felt about it. But it was a fun memory because it was just authentic, right? That's really what it is. It's like we can do the show and sometimes the episodes feel, I don't know what they feel, but sometimes they are formulaic. Sometimes we pick a topic and we stick to the show notes and we do, boom, 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 which is good. It's good to have structure. That's part of that professional feel that we have. But then sometimes it's to that foundational core of no, we're just nerding out. We're a couple of friends and we're just going to talk about this thing that we're going to talk about.
Whole point of the show. That's why it stayed in there.
All right. So we did not have a ton of guests, but we're going to keep touching back on that episode because who was your favorite guest this year?
We had some really great potential guests, which means we'll just push them into next season and try again to schedule some time with some really great guest ideas that we have. And I was looking at our show. We have a season chart and I only saw Adam on there as a guest.
Right.
Because the only other guest I saw was Andrew for the Harry Potter. And I know he was like, I don't want to watch that anymore.
And didn't be on the episode. Out on us.
I guess it's Adam because I couldn't remember any other guests that we had.
Well, not that he was bad. He's not a default. He was good. He was a good guest.
Well, I'm not picking him because of default, but he was also a good guest. I go back to what I said about it being my favorite episode, right? Having a former student that I saw I left before his senior year. So I had him for 3 years, but I was familiar with him because I was at the middle school programs recruiting. And it's really cool. It's just a really unique thing coming from a teacher perspective to have a former student who continued on in the art form, got a degree in the art form and is living his life now as a music teacher. And again, those ripples. It's just really cool to have him on the show.
Well, my favorite guest is going to be Andrew because even though it wasn't written on the doc, Andrew was our guest for the Spider-Man episode.
Oh, that's right.
I love the Spider-Man episode. I love the Spider-Man episode because it's one of my favorite topics. And we've been waiting to do it was so hard not to do Spider-Man first season. I think we did 2 comic book episodes first season. It was hard not to choose it again second season. I'm glad we waited because the show is even better third season where we got to finally do Spider-Man, my favorite superhero of all times, and also Andrew's favorite superhero of all times. And
right.
That episode is one of those episodes that I'm going to have as a dad forever of, us bonding over this timeless comic book character and these storylines and stuff. When Andrew chose his favorite or his exemplar Spider-Man episode, he chose a real great one, and he just told a tear-jerking, heartwarming story, and he did such a good job on it that I'll never forget it. I thought that episode was absolutely fantastic, and it was because we got to do it with my son and have that nerd conversation. It was just fantastic and, special to me.
Yeah, I completely forgot that he was on that episode. It feels like forever ago. That feels like we did it last season, but it wasn't last season. It was just this past fall. So
right.
Yeah, he's so knowledgeable about a lot of things, but especially Spider-Man. So it was cool to have two really deep dive experts, and then me, who knows a little bit, mostly because of the movies and not the comic book. So that's a really great episode for people who may not be as familiar about Spider-Man and all the different stories. But you're right, the one he picked as his favorite, I think the way you said it was that it's a favorite knowing that Spider-Man has existed for decades. And
right, it was one of those where it was like, yeah. It was about Spider-Man itself and not a Spider-Man story. Just fantastic. Tangent. I work with a staff in the school district where I'm at. And so on Wednesday afternoons, they do, we call it processing, where they have to just do work that they do as a team. A lot of times it's like e-waste processing where we bring in like e-waste and we have to record the serial numbers on a big spreadsheet and then like sort them into bins and just like kind of work like that. I think this last week we have cases for our devices and they have a lifetime warranty on them. So we have to like organize them and write down serial numbers to send them back and get new ones and that kind of thing. Like work like that.
It's
so they're all sitting
work.
around. It's just kind of mindless, like the mindless work that you just has to get done sometimes. So I was down there the other day and they had the newest Spider-Man movie, the one with all three Spider-Man. And it was so funny. It was so cute. So I have a tech who is our youngest tech and she's probably 23, 24.
Okay.
And we have like a senior tech who's been there forever and he's like in his early 70s.
Okay.
And the two of them were sitting together and he had not seen the new Spider-Man movies at all. And she apparently loves these movies and they're her favorite. She loves Tom Holland. She loves all the Spider-Man movies. And she's just over there. And she's like, oh, no. You gotta watch this part. You gotta watch this part. Look, wait for it. And then like Andrew Garfield steps through the thing and she's like, oh my God. Like it was the first time she's seen it. I'm like, I know she's seen this movie 10 times. And she's telling the old guy all about it, like nerding out, like this part made me cry in the theater. You gotta watch this part. Oh my gosh. What a moment for these two.
That is awesome.
All revolving around Spider-Man and having a good time. So it was super funny.
You know what's really cool is seeing people who, they illegally recorded whatever in the theaters, but there's some videos and reels or TikToks out there of people's reactions to those scenes and just watching the crowd go nuts in the theater during those parts. I remember I think I went and saw it with you and Andrew and Maria.
Oh yeah, I'm sure we did.
Oh gosh, that's such a good time. Even now, you get those feelings now. I haven't watched it 100 times. I've maybe watched it twice, but yeah. So, I mean, we've done a superhero episode all 3 seasons. It's makes sense that we would continue that. It's time for a female superhero is all I'm going to say.
Sure.
Like Wonder Woman or Supergirl or
we already did
Miss Marvel.
We already did Wonder Woman.
We did not do Wonder Woman. Season 1 was Batman? Superman?
Season 1 was Batman and Superman. Season 2 was Wonder Woman. Season 3 was Spider-Man. Right?
We do I don't think we did Wonder Woman. Hold on. I'm gonna actually pull up our
I could swore we did.
Episode guide for season 2 was Superman, which means Batman was season 1. I'm gonna open up season 1 as well. Nope, not new. I know there's season 2. I know I opened season 1 recently to get that chart. Season 1 was Batman. We did talk about Wonder Woman in the comic book episode, but not as the standalone.
That must be what I'm thinking about because I was like, I was sure we gave recommendations and we talked about Wonder Woman, but maybe it was just here's the best Wonder Woman story I know or something like that.
That was the comic book superhero comic book episode. Where is it? Let's see. Because season 1 we did non-superhero comic books. Season 2, I know we did superhero comic books. I just can't find the title for. Oh, There Goes My Hero. It was superhero comic books with Andrew. So that's what we talked about.
That must have been it. And I bet you had a Wonder Woman and I had a Wonder Woman and we talked a bunch about Wonder Woman. Okay.
Yes.
Well, we could do that next week. We'll have to talk in our production meeting of who we're going to do. I might try to convince you to do Ms. Marvel.
Ms. Marvel. Yeah. I thought about that too.
I think you'd enjoy catching up on that first graphic novel novel and the TV show and the movie, the Marvels movie that came out was really good.
Oh, right. Yeah. Which
It
I haven't
was,
seen
it was a
yet.
lot of fun. So, but it'll take some homework. So we'll
Yeah,
see
yeah, yeah.
about that.
We'll discuss it in our season 4 planning meeting for sure.
No, you know what we'll do? You know what we'll do?
What?
Just like troll everybody. We'll do like Kathy.
No.
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 What?
I mean, yeah, we could. Look, there's pluses and minuses to all of that, and we'll discuss in season 4 production and planning.
Mm-hmm.
We might be able to do both. I mean, we could shake things up next year, which I think we'll talk about that a little bit in a little bit, actually.
All right.
We've done favorite episode, favorite moments, guests. How about your favorite topics? So I approach this, all of these are topics. Sometimes with our tangents, we had topics within topics.
Always. To the point where I think
will-
we've done episodes that we haven't done.
Yes. And I will say what I really liked about the season overall, which I hinted at before, is that we just shared a lot about ourselves this season. We had a lot of reminiscing. For you, it was a Quantum Leap episode. For me, we finally did a Stephen King episode. I loved both of those topics because I think for me, when we do topics about things like Spider-Man, like Quantum Leap, that are really heavily into what you like, I think I learn more about you in ways that we wouldn't really talk about just in our general hangout all the time.
I think
right?
that's fair because I think when we're choosing a lot of these topics, especially when they're ones that's like, oh, well, I love this so much, I could definitely talk about it for an hour.
Yes.
It's a lot of times it's because that's a formative property, right? That's something that means something to either one of us, whether it's, the teenage time where we were trying to figure stuff out or stuff that we did with certain family members that have good memories and those kinds of things. Like that's really how we're picking these topics to be true to the core
nerds that
tenet of
we
the
are.
show.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think, I know you won't necessarily read a lot of Stephen King, which I would never force you to because I know you're not a fan of the horror genre, but I think you would be surprised how much of me is really related to how he writes, how he describes things, how Stephen King approaches things. As I'm doing my 24 for 24 and I'm going back and listening to 6 books that I read as a teenager, I went to age 21 and younger. So 2001 or earlier was the last time I read these books. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this book formed so much of what I believe about this. This book formed so much what I understand about horror right now because of this. So it was really cool to hear that from you from Quantum Leap on your end, and then for me to share it in a small form on the Stephen King episode. Those were my favorite topics.
Even though the only thing anybody paid attention to was the use of the word multiverse.
Yeah, I mean, again, there is a multiverse, and I am one of the rare Stephen King fans that has not read all of The Dark Tower, so I don't understand his multiverse very well, but it's there. So shut up, listeners. Do you have a favorite topic, Rob?
I do. I'm going to go with the topic that was a new idea, and that was the 30s episode.
Oh, yeah.
I think that was super clever. I don't know why it just occurred to us and we did it. And so we looked at that. It happened in 2023. So we looked at 1993 and having to stick within that box of like just this year, what was special about it, and take a look at just that narrow lens of movies, music, games, popular, nerd books and those kinds of things was really fun to me. And I'm very much excited to do 1994 next year and next season.
I think we did 1994 this year, because we did it in the second half of the season, didn't we? I might have to look that up too. Hold on.
I'm just the talent.
Yeah, we did it. So we did 94 because that episode came out in February 2024. So we'll keep it in the second half of the season, do 95 next year. But same idea. That doesn't change what you're saying.
Right. So that means next year we'll do 1995.
Correct.
And honestly, I still have like in a regular rotation in my car listening to the 1994 playlist that I made after that episode, because we were looking at like what were the popular songs. I'm like, oh, I like that song. Yeah. So I got like a 12 song playlist of 1994 that keeps popping up for me while I'm cruising around.
Well, we came about that idea because of something else, which I don't want to mention now, or maybe I should just mention it because it may become an episode next year, but we were talking about doing an episode just about Adam Sandler. And then you came up with, was 30 years ago Billy Madison? Because that was his first major film that created Happy Madison Productions. And we were off by a year. It's 95. So we will definitely do the 30s again. And I think that's a staple for every season now. But we might still do just the Adam Sandler episode. And listeners, tell us what you think about that. let us know.
Very cool. I'm also looking forward to when we finally catch up with the movie thing, because we did like movies in the 80s, movies in the 90s, movies in the
Right.
aughts. We're going to hit movies in the 2010s, and then we're still going to be in the 2020s. So then we're going to have to move backwards, and it's going to be the 70s, then the 60s, then the 50s. And I'm looking forward to that too, because there's some absolute gems out there.
Oh boy. That's gonna be
You
fun.
don't know how many movies you've watched from like the 50s until you really start looking at the like good movies from the 50s. And then it's like, oh my God, I love that movie. Yeah, that's
fair.
right. That's a great movie.
That's fair. That will be good a couple seasons from now. Well, the end of the season really coincides with us as educators and taking a little bit of time off for the summer. Although both of us are in management, so we don't really have summer in the same way that we had summer as teachers. However, it's still a thing. So do you have any
take a little more time off? You're outside. The weather's good.
Yeah.
Like we don't want to be like, okay, like right now it's, you know, for the schedule this year was every Sunday. Every Sunday is podcast Sunday, right?
Right.
Especially for you, it was just
Yes.
a full day of work. And during the summer, it's much more likely like people are going to come visit. You're going to take a little weekend trip and like all that kind of stuff, which makes it a little bit tricky for
well, and without students in the building, it's the timeline for me at least isn't that strict. I might show up at 10 o'clock and just work through the day or work from home in the morning or go and leave. Like the office closes a little early. I can stay there and work or come home and work. Like there's just more flex to the time versus when students are in the building. I'm there 7:30 to 5 o'clock every day at minimum. That's not the same in the summer. So that flexibility is there. And also that's when as management, we're encouraged to take time off because students aren't in the building. So I have a chunk of days in June. And so we're planning out actually even this morning, my partner and I were planning out what does it look like for these 10 days. We're thinking about renting a camper van. We're trying to see like, is the camper van worth it versus getting hotel rooms and just driving our car? And, if we're going to spend this much on a camper van, we can just put a down payment on a camper van for that much and just pay that out. Like we're talking about stuff like that, but nerd plans for the summer. What do you got?
I'm on such a strict nerd schedule right now that I don't know that I'm going to necessarily be able to add a ton, but I do specifically, if I do look at adding something like, well, what could you do, when you're not doing the podcast stuff, if you're not doing the newsletter, you're not recording the podcast and you're like all this stuff, like what could I fill that time with? And it's like, well, sure, I could put more time into playing games. I could put more time into painting, could do that kind of stuff. But I think what I'm going to try to do, I have some ideas for the show. And especially we're looking at some behind the scenes modifications to our hosting and potential advertising and different lineups and stuff so that our feed gets a little bit different. And I think if we can get that sorted out, it would be a good push to do some small scale content. And I almost hesitate to say it because I feel like I'll be committing to it, and I don't know how it's going to work out, but I want to figure out the workflow to do some kind of nerd news show. So
okay.
I find that a ton of our listener mail or a ton of the things that I see online are our listeners sharing things with us that they think that we'll enjoy. So I'll get a news article or I'll get a video post about something. It's like, oh, hey, did you see this? And I'm always like, yeah, I saw that 3 weeks ago, dog. Like, where you been? And it's making me kind of realize like I could be the one to deliver this in a more timely manner to other people, right?
Okay.
So if I figured out how to curate some of those articles and things and that stuff that like I naturally get every day when I go on to, the websites or listen to the podcasts that I listen to and those kinds of things, like if I can figure out a good workflow for curating that stuff, putting it together into like just little bite-sized chunks, maybe once a week of like this week's nerd news, that might be a great way for us to push out content every week on like a new platform and organization, do something valuable that is, informs our base and that kind of thing. That wouldn't be, it's going to be stuff that I'm reading about anyway, but then I could share it with this platform that we already have in a way that kind of like helps people, keeps people engaged over the summer and starts building us up with maybe a new platform or something of like, oh yeah, there's content coming out every week and it's new and it's fresh and it's that kind of thing. So that's what I'm looking at for this summer, trying to see if I can figure out a little mini nerd newsroom for our podcast feed.
Nice.
I know what you're going to talk about.
I mean, we talked about it last episode for sure, but I am just as days progress, I'm getting more and more excited about HowlmouthCon. I've not been to many cons. You've not been to many cons. I've certainly never been to one that is just hyper focused on one thing.
Mhm.
I tried to go, actually, I might have talked about this maybe the first season, but when I was living in Ohio, they had a 5K in and around the jail that Shawshank Redemption was filmed.
Oh,
so
okay.
it doesn't function as a jail anymore. The building is there. It's a historical building in
Nobody
Ohio.
was surprised to learn that prison is in Ohio.
I mean, I was. Yeah, it's a location 5K in which the night before in the jail, in one of the rooms, you sit and watch the film with other enthusiasts. The next day is the 5K that goes through the town, and you can stop photo ops at places that were in the film, like the bank he walks into at the end, and just there's all these little things in the middle of 5K. People cosplay, they dress up, as like Andy
Inmates.
Dufresne in the jail inmate, and like some of them are in suits and some dress like red, or like it was just bonkers. That would have been really fun to go to. It's not really a con. It was a 5K, but to me, that's the con idea.
Well, if you get to go see the movie and stuff.
Yeah.
With fans,
and with
like,
a couple of the actors
level.
there, they had it all set up, but I didn't go while I lived there. And it might be something that I still do at some point, but I don't know that I've ever been around other Buffy fans who are as nerdy about Buffy as I am. I'll say even we are, because I know you're a fan. You're just different. We're different levels of fans, but you're still a fan. I know you enjoy the show at times.
I'm the fan who's gotten to the point where I joined the message board because I thought this was going to be really fun, but then I started just trolling people and talking about how crappy the show actually is, but I'm still on the message board.
Because there's some good things that Joss Whedon did out of this show, and there's some great things about it. Anyways, I'm the fan who watched it from day one live, the whole series, bonded with my college roommates about it to the extent that we were graduated when the final episode aired on television. My roommate from Georgia flew in, and my roommate from Long Beach came up, and we were in my apartment in Oxnard watching the final episode together. And like just staying up late and talking about it after it aired and stuff. So I'm excited for
these folks to go to Hellmouth Con with you this year.
Stacy's coming for
Nice.
sure. And I asked Tiffany from Georgia to come on by, and she's got 2 little ones. So they're both under the age of 5. So we'll see if she can make it happen. And if I have to throw a few bucks to make it happen, I will. But I have recruited Stacy to wear a Nerd Best Friend shirt with us and talk about the podcast while we're there. So we'll have to get new shirts for that for sure. But I'm excited for Hellmouth Con. I'm excited for I have like 10 work days consecutive. That's like 2 weeks of time all together, instead of last year coming in June. I was still on the clock with, it's one of those weird things. I'm still technically employed by the district we work together, but I was already here in Ukiah working here, and they just like it was just a weird transition. And I had a couple days around my birthday, but I didn't take a day off in the summer transitioning into being a principal. So I'm going to step away from the office and actually take time, and I'm going to take those 10 days, and we're probably going to drive up to Eugene, Oregon, where my stepson is, and spend some time up there, and go into Portland. I've got to go to Powell's bookstore and nerd out with books and games there. We'll go to Mock's boarding house and play some games and maybe buy some games. So we'll do some nerdy travels, but the big one is going to be Hellmouth Con. And the other big one is my thoughts for next season. So let's get to that part.
All right. Well, I already kind of shared my thoughts for next season is this nerd news idea. We'll see how that pans out this summer, and if it's something that we think we can sustain as part of the show, and maybe some of that in between time during our episodes.
Yeah, and the thing I was thinking about spending some time this summer on is seeing what it would look like if we took our formula and our show format and went to a weekly episode instead of every 2 weeks. I don't know that we'll be able to do it, but it's worth looking into. I do think some of that consistency is where we are consistent every 2 weeks, but it being every 2 weeks and then taking the big time off on the summer, it might be where we plateaued a little bit. So we'll look at as we go to plan next season, what would it look like to do maybe a little bit shorter episodes and do them once a week? I don't know. We'll look into that. And I'm going to spend some time this summer really trying to map out what that would look like without changing the premise or flow of our show very much.
The two ideas can work together. We shall see.
100%. I'm excited. I'm excited to get into season 4 and keep building our listener group and building our nerd friends. And
community is the word you're looking for. Community.
I like nerd friends. Yes, our listening community. You are correct. I don't know if we've put Spotify on blast, but when they took over Anchor, I think is also where our show listenership, sponsorship definitely plateaued. So we're going to look into a couple of other platforms to upload the podcast. So,
and I think once we find that hosting platform, I think that's like going to be a perfect time for us to blast some more consistent, timely content and get ourselves back in shape. Keep making the show for you better and better every year.
Absolutely. And nothing wrong with building our nerd community.
Annalise, what's the nerdiest thing you did this week?
Oh my gosh, for the last time this season. Listen, I should be talking about that I got to throw the first pitch at Oracle Park where the San Francisco Giants play because my team got chosen to play against another high school team. It was supposed to be yesterday and I got asked to do the first pitch. So I was all practicing and getting ready for it and it got rained out. So I'm not talking about that as the nerdiest thing I did this week. That'll be next season. I'll talk about it because it got rescheduled. Of course, we're not doing any more episodes this season, but I'll talk about it and going to practice in front of all the baseball players and trying to just to make sure I don't make a fool of myself right there.
Okay, because that's going to be my next question is how did you practice? How much did you practice? And...
Well, I just went to the softball stadium, so I know it's not the same distance. And then the head coach was like, come to our practice. And then his next phone call to me 10 minutes later is like, well, I just got off a Zoom and they're postponing the game. So don't come to practice today. And it was good because it rained a lot overnight and our boys team tried to practice up here Saturday morning instead of having the game. And there was 6 inches of water in the baseball stadium. So I should have been talking about that, but no.
Well, nice of them to cancel it before you made the trip and then sat there in the rain all day for that game to get
it's very true. They wouldn't have even taken the tarp off the field, right? They're so protective of their MLB field. I don't blame them, but it got rescheduled and that'll happen in a couple weeks. But I'll say 2 things. The first is I'm just barreling right along with my 24 for 24, which is reading the 6 or listening to the audiobooks of 6 Stephen King books. I'm on the 6th now. And so I'm just barreling right through that. What I'm excited for, and this is very likely going to be the nerdiest thing I do this week, is once we're done recording, my partner and I look through that Castle Rock cookbook, which is all based off of Maine and Stephen King. And it actually gives you a little map of where these fictional towns like Castle Rock and Derry, Maine, that's where it happens. It gives you a little map of where they're supposed to be in Maine. But we picked vegetarian chili and our local JCPenney's is closing. So everything's like 70% off. We went and bought this nice, expensive Dutch oven for 70% off. And we're going to make some of Nellie's chili. And Nellie is a character from Needful Things, which is one of the books that I just recently listened to. So I'm excited for that. That's happening right after we're done here.
There you go. Put that multiverse in your pot and smoke it.
It's now multiversed into real life.
Now it's a chiliverse.
There you go. How about you? What's the nerdiest thing you did this week?
It was a nerdy week. We talked about before, my onlygames.co order showed up and I got
it even came up in a box that's nondescript.
Oh yeah, like I got boxes.
It could be anything.
It could be anything, but it's 3D printed little miniature scary dudes. So that's fun.
Only games.
Only games. Don't get it wrong. So that was fun. And it was interesting to see what the wait time was like. Cause if you, if you've been listening to the show and know that the show comes out every other week, like it's been quite a while since we talked about that. But again, the whole point of that place is it's made to order. These are 3D printed things that you choose. Okay, here's my order. And then somebody goes and 3D prints them all for you and cleans them up and packages them and sends them. And it's a .co, which means it's not in the United States. So that's another big delay and stuff. But they finally came and it was very exciting to dump them all out, and we'll see how they paint up and how the quality lasts. Like if they're gonna, and I'll definitely let you know if they're brittle and they start breaking when I'm painting them, or if they're super good and smooth and perfect. Either way, I'll let you know, and it'll decide on future orders for me. That's for sure.
That's the future part of it. Just what's your first impression? I know you opened every single one of those boxes.
You know I did. First impression is that they're perfect. They're very solid. There's very little supports that I'm going to have to just click off the last little bits of with my X-Acto blade, but I do think for every mini, I'm going to have to just kind of give it a once over with the X-Acto blade, make sure it's perfectly smooth. There are some that have very long pieces, like big swords and stuff that are bent. But I believe all I have to do is dump them in hot water and then dunk them in ice water, and that'll fix that problem real easy.
Okay.
So they'll take a little bit of work. Most of them were one piece. There's a couple maybe that are only two pieces, and that could just be the designer that I chose. Like I don't have to do a lot of building or worry about pieces not fitting together perfectly, because that's one big difference with plastic cast stuff is it's perfect because the plastic can't go further than the metal mold is. So everything always fits together really cleanly. With resin, sometimes if the bottom of this model is supposed to fit in a niche on the other model, sometimes it's a little bit curvy or a little bit bulbous because the resin kind of settled or dripped a little bit, or gravity made the resin move, so it's not perfect. And then you got to do a bunch of scraping and cutting, which isn't great because you don't want to breathe resin dust into your lungs. But so it was nice that really, I think there's maybe one or two that are two pieces, and it's really just like sticking the sword on the hand or something like that.
Nice.
So first impression is solid so far. Nothing was broken. That was cool.
Perfect.
So
I know you're worried about that.
My Felder order arrived. My last Felder order went. In fact, you can't see it, but your thing that I ordered for you is right up there on the shelf waiting for you.
Nice. You have to let me know how much it was so I can send it to you.
Oh, sure. And so a bunch of foam came, and so that was something nerdy I did, was empty out all my boxes and put my minis in the foam and figure out how to organize the foam in the board game box and that kind of stuff. I back to Kickstarter. I know I'm not supposed to do that anymore.
Of course you did.
Super cool. It is pre-painted terrain that's plastic molded, and I saw the machine that they have, and it just blew me away with the technology. Think of an inkjet printer, right? With like a nozzle that, but now imagine a conveyor belt full of plastic terrain walls and floors and doors and windows feeding through under one of those things that's just like but splurting paint on it to paint the textured plastic terrain and stuff. I'm like, I gotta see how this is. Like, I gotta check this out. It was too cool.
Like it comes and you don't have to paint it.
Correct. It's pre-painted on this like industrial painting machine, almost like 3D printer technology, because it has the Z axis as well, because the stuff's not all the same size and it's textured. So it's moving on a Z axis as well as an X axis. I got it. I had to.
Wow. Of course. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
So it's either going to come and it's going to look super cool, and this is like revolutionary for modeling and tabletop hobby, or
you're going to have to
3 years from now, I'm still going to be like, oh my God, I can't believe I bagged that thing and never showed up. All they had was protection there. So we'll see. So that's exciting. I am, with all my nerdy stuff, like I'm on track, just like you with my 24 for 24. I was looking at it, I'm like, oh, okay, this is like 4th, 5th month of the year. And darned if I don't have like 5 or 6 or 7 things, get ready to be done. So far, so good on hitting those milestones and get my nerdy stuff done.
I also, I think I've finished one of them where it's watch, because I changed it. It's not watch 24 new things. It's like watch, it could be an episode. So I finished watching True Blood, which I hated, but I got to the end and whatever. And I started Shameless, which isn't really a nerdy show, but it was a really popular show with William H. Macy for a while. So I'm watching that. I think I've hit 24 episodes easily. So yeah, I'm doing pretty good on track with all of them, especially the 6 Stephen King books. I'm going to be done with that. I'm like, what am I going to do? I don't know. Going to have to fill that time with something else.
Well, good for us.
It's been an amazing season with you nerds, and season 4 planning starts now. Look for our summer special episodes or one-shots, and keep sending your favorite reels, memes, TikToks, and the nerdiest things you're doing each week. Many exciting things to come for Nerd Best Friends, so make sure you follow and subscribe.
Get those TikToks in before the government takes it away from you.
Keep up to date with Nerd Best Friends podcast by clicking on that subscribe or follow button on your device. We appreciate our fans, especially the ones that share our podcast with others and give us that 5-star rating wherever they listen to our show. We are at Nerd Best Friends on social medias, and you can send us a message through podcast@nerdbestfriends.com. These are the best and easiest ways to grow our nerd family. Season 3 in the books.
I love it. I very much look forward to talking to you all again.
Absolutely. Thanks for listening, nerds. Stay nerdy.
Did you have a name of that listener or no? Give a shout out, or you're not sure?
I don't remember who
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Didn't mean to.
I'm editing that part out.
Sorry.
Well, let's
All
move
right.
on to.
You can pry my TikToks from my cold dead hands.
Yeah, pretty much.
Thanks, Obama.
Got him.